She's just the help. Margaret's venomous sneer slashes through the Palo Alto mansion's dining room, her icy gaze mocking Aminata as chandeliers cast opulent golden light. Aminata, a fierce black entrepreneur, stands unyielding, her jollof rice dish steaming, defiance blazing amidst elitist scorn and a near slur's sting. In this glittering fortress of billionaire privilege, her presence threatens a tech empire's gilded, exclusionary legacy. What hidden strength fuels her stand against the Carver's cruel, towering arrogance and whispered slurs? Will their vile prejudice unleash a seismic reckoning that shatters their smug dynasty forever? Shadows of betrayal and ruthless ambition swirl darkly. Can Aminata's resolve topple their contemptuous world? Subscribe for epic tales of triumph. Share your city in the comments and join us. Can one woman's courage silence a family's disdain? Stay tuned to see this explosive clash redefine power, respect, and legacy. A luxurious Palo Alto mansion dining room shimmered, its crystal chandeliers casting golden light over a polished mahogany table. Yet the air was heavy with the carver's icy scorn. Aminata stood, clutching a steaming dish of jollof rice, her mother's recipe as venomous whispers. She's just the help, sliced through the opulence like a blade through silk. This tale unveils how Aminata, a black entrepreneur from Oakland, turned their mockery into silence with a secret poised to shatter their gilded world. For those who felt judged before speaking, her story strikes a chord. Smash that subscribe button and ring the bell for more tales of defiance and triumph. Drop your city in the comments. Where are you watching from? This journey begins in 2018, where sparks of love and ambition ignited, setting the stage for a battle that would shake an empire to its core. San Francisco pulsed with the electric hum of a tech conference, a crucible of dreams where fortunes were forged. Aminata's modest booth stood out, its sleek posters and glowing laptops showcasing her startup, a platform connecting minority-owned businesses, bodegas, hair salons, dreams stifled by lack of capital, to investors hungry for innovation. Her tailored navy blazer hugged her slender frame, braids neatly tied, her warm smile radiating confidence despite fleeting, skeptical glances from passers-by. The conference hall buzzed with tailored suits, glass walls reflecting ambition, the air thick with the aroma of overbrewed coffee and the promise of opportunity. Aminata's presence was a quiet rebellion, a black woman from Oakland staking her claim in a world that often looked past her eyes bright with determination. James Carver, the keynote speaker, strode onto the stage, his presence commanding yet devoid of arrogance. His tech empire, Carver Tech, had risen from a garage app to a billion-dollar titan, its logo a beacon on every startup's vision board. Tall, with salt and pepper hair and eyes sparkling with curiosity, James spoke of building something real, his voice resonating with a sincerity that captivated the room. Aminata scribbled notes, her pen racing, his ideas echoing her own vision for a more inclusive industry. When he finished, a swarm of men in loafers and women in power heels vied for his handshake, but James, alone with a paper coffee cup, approached her booth, his gaze steady and warm. "Interesting model," James said, nodding at her laptop screen, his tone inviting, like a fireside chat rather than a boardroom decree. Aminata, momentarily startled, launched into her pitch, her voice steady as she outlined her platform's mission to empower Oakland's overlooked entrepreneurs. He leaned in, his questions sharp, scalability, community impact, yet free of condescension, his eyes locked on hers with genuine interest. Their conversation stretched for hours, the conference's hum fading, their coffee cups cooling on the table. "I'm impressed," he said, eyes crinkling with a smile. "You see beyond the bottom line." Aminata felt a spark, not of wealth, but of a rare connection. Two minds aligning over ideas that could reshape the world. Months later, their texts evolved into candlelit dinners, their dinners into late-night talks about life, not just profit margins. Aminata's startup thrived, pulling six figures, but it was James's intellect, his warmth, that drew her heart. In her modest Oakland apartment, surrounded by takeout boxes and dog-eared business books, he proposed, his voice soft but sure. I want you as my partner, in every way, he said, offering a simple silver band. No ostentation. Aminata's heart raced as she said yes, not for his billions, but for the man who saw her mind as clearly as her soul. She thought she was entering a love story, unaware it would become a battlefield. The Carver family's Palo Alto mansion was a spectacle of wealth. Marble floors gleamed underfoot, mahogany paneling glowed with centuries-old polish, and chandeliers hung like frozen starlight, their prisms scattering light across ornate ceilings. Yet the chill came from its inhabitants, not the air. Eleanor, James's mother, a former socialite, greeted Aminata with a polished smile, her silk dress whispering elegance, her silver hair swept into a perfect chignon. Aminata, how vibrant you are, she said, her voice smooth but edged. The word a subtle jab implying her presence was an audacious intrusion in their pristine world. James whispered, "She means well," but his eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt, his hand tightening around Aminata's as they stepped into the lion's den. Richard, James's older brother, lounged in a velvet armchair, his tailored suit failing to mask the resentment etched into his weathered face. A failed entrepreneur, he carried the weight of his mediocrity like a grudge. "So you're the startup star," he sneered, his voice dripping with sarcasm, refusing to shake Aminata's outstretched hand. "I hope you can keep up with the family business," he added, muttering to Claire about keeping things in the right hands. Aminata stood firm, her navy dress hugging her frame, braids swept neatly back, her smile a shield against the sting of his dismissal, her heart anchored by her love for James. Claire, James's sister, a Stanford graduate with a model's poise, entered with heels clicking like a metronome on the marble floor. Her eyes scanned Aminata, her dress, her braids, her very existence, before settling into a smile that never reached her eyes. "Your accent is so urban," she said, her voice laced with condescension, as if Oakland were a foreign land rather than a neighboring city. "It's so refreshing to have diversity here," she added, her diamond earrings glinting under the chandelier's glow, her tone marking Aminata as a novelty in their polished narrative. "Just Oakland charm," Aminata replied, her voice steady, deflecting the barb. But the hurt lingered like a bruise beneath her skin. The true test came at a family gala in the mansion's sprawling ballroom, where crystal flutes clinked and cherubs adorned the painted ceiling. Aminata, in a crimson gown that hugged her curves, moved with grace, James's arm a steady anchor. Margaret, a cousin with a penchant for cruelty, approached, her champagne glass dangling, and asked loudly enough for heads to turn, "Are you the new caterer?" Smirks rippled through the crowd, their eyes piercing like darts. "I'm James's wife," Aminata said, her face burning but her voice unwavering, her crimson gown a bold statement against their judgment. Margaret's smile was unapologetic. "My mistake, you looked so helpful with that tray." The tray held her jollof rice, a gesture of connection now twisted into a weapon. Whispers followed Aminata through the night. "Who does she think she is?" Their voices a chorus of disdain. By the bar, Richard's voice carried to her ears, low but cutting. "She's a diversity hire he took too far." Claire's laugh, sharp as breaking glass, joined in, her glass raised as if toasting his cruelty. James, sensing the tension, stepped in, his voice firm. "That's enough." But the crowd's smirks lingered, a reminder of the battlefield Aminata had entered. She wanted to proclaim her startup's millions, her worth forged in sweat and strategy, but held back, her love for James, her guiding star. Their prejudice sought to shrink her, a black woman daring to love their golden son. But Aminata was building something with James, a force they couldn't yet see, a spark that would soon ignite their empire. This was the crucible where Aminata's journey began, a realm where every glance was a judgment, every word a test of her resolve. For those who've faced such scorn, her fight echoes loudly. Stay tuned as Aminata's battle was just kindling, poised to set their world ablaze with a truth they couldn't ignore. The Palo Alto mansion rose like a fortress of privilege, its marble facade gleaming under the California sun. Yet its grandeur cloaked a chilling hostility that pierced like a winter wind. Aminata stepped through its heavy oak doors, clutching a steaming dish of jollof rice, her mother's recipe, only to be met with venomous whispers. "She's just the help," their words sharper than any blade. This chapter traces her entry into a world that rejected her, where polished smiles hid daggers and prejudice cut deep into her resolve. For those who felt like outsiders in a room of judgment, her story strikes a chord. Smash that subscribe button and ring the bell for more tales of defiance and strength. Drop your city in the comments. Where are you watching from? Here, Aminata faced a battlefield of scorn, her courage tested by those who saw her as an intruder in their gilded realm. In early 2019, Aminata, newlywed to James Carver, entered the Carver family's domain, her heart still aglow with the warmth of their love. Their wedding, a vibrant affair in Oakland filled with laughter, music, and the rich aroma of jollof rice, felt like a distant dream within this mansion's icy embrace. Marble floors stretched beneath her feet, their polished surface reflecting the glow of mahogany paneling that lined the walls, while crystal chandeliers hung overhead, their prisms scattering light like frozen constellations across an ornate ceiling. Yet the true chill emanated from the people within, their presence a silent decree that Aminata did not belong. James held her hand, his grip a steady anchor, but the weight of their judgmental gazes pressed upon her like a storm cloud. Eleanor Carver, James's mother, greeted her with an elegance honed by years as a socialite, her silver hair swept into a perfect chignon, her silk dress whispering wealth with every graceful step. "Aminata, how vibrant you are," she said, her voice smooth as glass but edged with a subtle venom. The word of veiled jab implying her presence was an audacious disruption in their pristine world. James leaned close, whispering, "She means well." But his eyes betrayed a flicker of doubt, his fingers tightening around hers as if to shield her from the storm. Aminata, dressed in a navy gown that hugged her slender frame, her braids neatly swept back, felt like a defendant on trial. Her every feature, skin, hair, existence, scrutinized under their unrelenting gaze. Richard, James's older brother, lounged in a velvet armchair, his tailored suit a thin veneer over the resentment etched into his weathered face. A failed entrepreneur, he carried the weight of his mediocrity like a grudge, his eyes narrowing as they met hers. "So you're the startup star," he sneered, his voice dripping with sarcasm, refusing to shake her outstretched hand. "I hope you can keep up with the family business," he added, muttering to Claire about keeping things in the right hands. Aminata stood firm, her smile a carefully crafted shield, the sting of his dismissal burning beneath her composed exterior, her heart anchored by her love for James. Claire, James's sister, glided into the room with a model's poise, her heels clicking like a metronome on the marble floor, her eyes scanning Aminata like an intruder breaching their sacred space. "Your accent is so urban," she said, her smile cold as the chandelier's light, the word a barb that pricked at Aminata's skin, marking her as foreign in their elite enclave. "It's so refreshing to have diversity here," Claire added, her diamond earrings glinting with each calculated word, her tone framing Aminata as a novelty rather than an equal. "Just Oakland charm," Aminata replied, her voice steady, deflecting the insult. But the hurt lingered like a bruise, her resolve hardening against their scorn. The family gala, held in the mansion's sprawling ballroom, was a crucible of fire and ice. Crystal flutes clinked, their delicate chimes mingling with the laughter of Silicon Valley's elite under a ceiling painted with cherubs and gold leaf. Aminata, in a crimson gown that hugged her curves, moved with grace, James's arm a steady anchor against the tide of judgment. Margaret, a cousin with a penchant for cruelty, approached, her champagne glass dangling, and asked loudly enough for heads to turn, "Are you the new caterer?" Smirks rippled through the crowd, their eyes piercing like darts through the opulent haze. "I'm James's wife," Aminata declared, her face burning but her voice unwavering, the crimson gown a bold statement against their disdain. Margaret's smile was unapologetic, syrupy with malice. "My mistake. You looked So helpful with that tray. The tray held her jollof rice, a gesture of connection now twisted into a weapon of humiliation. Whispers trailed Aminata through the night. Who does she think she is? Their voices a chorus of disdain that echoed off the ballroom's gilded walls. By the bar, Richard's voice cut through, low but venomous, to a guest. She's a diversity hire he took too far. Claire's laugh, sharp as breaking glass, joined in, her glass raised as if toasting his cruelty, her diamond earrings catching the chandelier's light. James, sensing the tension, stepped forward, his voice firm. That's enough. But the crowd's smirks lingered, a reminder of the battlefield Aminata had entered, their eyes boring into her like a jury passing sentence. She yearned to proclaim her startup's millions, her worth forged in sweat and strategy, but held back. Her love for James, her guiding star, her silence a shield against their barbs. Each visit to the mansion was a fresh trial, the air thick with unspoken rules she was meant to break. Eleanor's remarks grew sharper, her voice laced with condescension. It's so brave to wear those braids here, she said, as if Aminata's hair were a rebellion against their polished world. Claire's barbs cut deeper, her eyes dissecting Aminata's outfits like a critic reviewing a flawed performance. Richard's silence was its own weapon, his refusal to engage a clear dismissal, his presence a looming shadow. Aminata brought dishes from her childhood, egusi soup, fried plantains, hoping to carve a space for herself in their fortress. The carvers ate, their forks scraping fine china, but their comments, how exotic, so different, dripped with disdain, each word a reminder of her outsider status. This was Aminata's battlefield, a realm of silk and crystal where every word was a test, every glance a judgment meant to diminish her. Their prejudice sought to shrink her, a black woman daring to love their golden son. But Aminata was forging something greater with James, a force they couldn't yet see, a spark that would soon ignite their empire. For those who've walked into rooms where they weren't wanted, her struggle echoes loudly. Stay tuned, as Aminata's fight was just kindling, poised to set their world ablaze with a truth they couldn't ignore. Carver Tech's boardroom shimmered with polished glass and steel, a temple of power where Silicon Valley's elite sculpted their legacies under the glow of sleek monitors. Aminata stood at its heart, presenting her vision, yet smirks and dismissals met her every word, as if she were a shadow trespassing in their sacred domain. This chapter follows her relentless fight to prove her worth against a tide of prejudice that sought to drown her brilliance. For those underestimated before they could shine, her story strikes a chord. Smash that subscribe button and ring the bell for more tales of grit and triumph. Drop your city in the comments. Where are you watching from? Here, Aminata built an empire's future, while the Carvers, blinded by bias, tried to erase her presence. By late 2019, Aminata and James had woven a life of love and ambition, their evenings in her cozy Oakland apartment filled with laughter and shared dreams. By day, she stepped into Carver Tech's headquarters, a fortress of innovation, where screens flickered with data and million-dollar deals were sealed in hushed tones. James invited her to consult on a bold new project, recognizing her expertise in connecting minority-owned businesses, bodegas, Black-owned cafes, tech startups stifled by lack of capital, to investors. Her outreach program promised a 35% valuation boost, opening untapped markets with a vision rooted in her Oakland upbringing. "This is brilliant," James said, his hand resting on hers. Their partnership a seamless dance of ideas and trust under the boardroom's stark fluorescent lights. The first board meeting was a gauntlet, a crucible where Aminata's resolve was tested. She stood at the head of a gleaming glass table, her presentation slides illuminating a massive screen with data on minority-led partnerships. The Carvers, Eleanor, Richard, Claire, sat like a tribunal, their faces carved in stone, their eyes cold with skepticism. Richard, slouched in his chair, interrupted her mid-sentence, his voice sharp as a blade. "Let's stick to the experts." The dismissal stung, as if her MBA and years of hustle were invisible to him. Aminata pressed on, her voice steady, detailing how her strategies could unlock new markets, her braids neatly swept into an updo, her tailored blazer a shield against their disdain. Eleanor's smile was thin, her fingers tracing the rim of a porcelain coffee cup. "It's ambitious," she said, her tone laced with condescension, "but perhaps too niche for Carver Tech." The word niche landed like a slap, framing her communities as footnotes rather than futures. The company gala was another battlefield, its opulent hall aglow with chandeliers, their light dancing across polished floors. Aminata, in a sapphire gown that hugged her curves, her braids swept into an elegant updo, pitched her program to investors, her voice resonant with conviction despite the butterflies in her stomach. Claire approached, her champagne flute dangling, her smile a razor's edge. "Could you grab me another drink?" she asked loudly, her voice carrying across the room, assuming Aminata was staff. Heads turned, the crowd hushing, their eyes piercing like needles. "I'm here as James's wife," Aminata replied, her tone calm but firm, her face burning under their scrutiny. Claire's laugh was sharp, like shattering glass. "My mistake." James across the room caught her eye, his face tightening with anger, but Aminata signaled no scene, her resolve hardening like steel. Later, hidden behind a velvet curtain near the bar, Aminata overheard Richard's voice, low and venomous, speaking to a board member. "She's a diversity hire James took too far." The words cut deep, her months of work, late nights crunching data, forging community deals, driving millions in revenue, reduced to a token gesture. The board member's chuckle echoed, a fresh wound she carried silently, her fist clenching in the shadows. She yearned to storm out, to proclaim her program's 20% stock boost in mere months, but held back, her love for James her anchor, her silence a calculated choice to fight another day. Every board meeting became a test of endurance. Aminata presented growth metrics, her slides glowing with undeniable success, only for Richard to interrupt. "We'll take it from here." Eleanor nodded, her pearl earrings glinting under the boardroom's harsh lights, her voice dripping with false warmth. "It's interesting how passionate you are." The word passionate dismissed her strategic brilliance as mere enthusiasm, a subtle jab that pricked at her pride. Claire's barbs were bolder, her lips curling at a dinner as Aminata shared plans for urban markets. "Your perspective is so unique," she said, her tone implying Aminata's ideas clashed with their polished standards. James's hand found hers under the table, his grip tight, but his silence revealed a heart torn between her and his family. Aminata channeled her anger into her work, her outreach program blossoming with contracts from Black and Latino startups, each deal a testament to her vision. By mid-2020, Carver Tech's valuation soared 35%, analysts hailing her strategy as a game changer in Silicon Valley's competitive landscape. James credited her publicly, his voice ringing with pride in boardroom meetings, but the Carver's eyes remained cold, their forks scraping plates filled with the profits of her labor, yet refusing to acknowledge her worth. One evening, as she left the office, Claire's voice hissed by the elevator. "She's using James to climb. She doesn't belong here." The words seared, but they ignited a fire in Aminata, her resolve burning brighter than their scorn. This chapter was Aminata's crucible, a relentless forge where every step fought for recognition, every word a battle to be heard. The Carver's smirks and slurs, diversity hire, unique perspective, built a wall she vowed to climb, her heart fueled by a vision they couldn't comprehend. She wasn't just a woman from Oakland. She was a force, shaping an empire's future with every calculated move. For those who've battled doubt in rooms that dismiss them, her struggle echoes like a clarion call. Stay tuned as Aminata's fight was set to shake the very foundations of their gilded world with a truth they couldn't ignore. The hospital room, a sterile cage of white walls, closed in with the somber beep of machines, their rhythm a cruel reminder of James's fading strength. His hand, once a pillar of vitality, trembled in Aminata's, the word leukemia shattering their shared world like glass under a hammer. This chapter traces Aminata's test of love, where the Carver's mask slipped, revealing greed and prejudice sharper than any blade. For those who faced heartbreak yet stood resolute, her story resonates. Smash that subscribe button and ring the bell for more tales of grit and defiance. Drop your city in the comments. Where are you watching from? Here, as James's light dimmed, the Carver's true colors blazed, and Aminata forged an unbreakable resolve to honor their shared vision. In the spring of 2023, Aminata and James's life was a vibrant tapestry woven with love and ambition, their Oakland evenings filled with laughter and dreams of a future unbound. But James's persistent fatigue, once dismissed as the toll of his empire, cast a shadow over his once sparkling eyes. Aminata, her heart heavy with unease, insisted on a doctor's visit, her intuition screaming beneath her calm exterior. The tests, scans, and endless waiting blurred into a haze until the doctor's voice cut through like a knife. Leukemia, aggressive, 18 months at best. Aminata stood frozen, the hospital's antiseptic air stinging her lungs, her hand gripping James's, as if she could tether him to life. "We'll get through this," she whispered, her voice steady for him, though her heart roared with fear, her eyes searching his for a flicker of hope. The diagnosis was an earthquake, cracking the foundation of their shared dreams. James, the visionary who'd built Carver Tech from a garage, now faced a foe no wealth could conquer. Aminata sat by his bedside, the hum of machines drowning out the Silicon Valley skyline beyond the window, its twinkling lights a cruel mockery of their fading plans. She read him reports, discussed strategies, clinging to their partnership as a lifeline. The Carvers, however, saw opportunity in his illness. Their hospital visits were less about comfort and more about control. Their questions circled like vultures. "Have you updated the will? Who's handling the board?" Their eyes darting to James's chart as if it held stock prices rather than his life's prognosis. Aminata watched, her silence a shield, their greed a stark contrast to her unwavering devotion. Richard was the boldest, his audacity cutting through the hospital's sterile calm. One afternoon, as Aminata adjusted James's pillow, he barged in, his tailored suit crisp, his voice blunt as a hammer. "You're not letting her influence the business, are you?" he asked James, his eyes flicking to Aminata as if she were an unwelcome guest. The word "her" was a barb, dismissing her role as the architect of Carver Tech's 35% valuation surge. "Aminata's my partner," James replied, his voice low but firm, his jaw tightening with effort. Richard scoffed, his gaze raking over her like she was a glitch in their legacy, his dismissal a wound she bore silently, her nails digging into her palms to keep her anger at bay. Claire's cruelty was more calculated, her family-only meetings at the mansion a deliberate exclusion. Aminata arrived with James's favorite books, only to find the Carvers huddled in the study, papers strewn across the mahogany table, their voices low and conspiratorial. "This is just family business," Claire said, closing the door with a smile that cut like glass, her diamond earrings glinting under the chandelier's glow. Aminata lingered in the hallway, her reflection in a gilded mirror showing a woman they refused to acknowledge. Eleanor's sharp whisper pierced through the door. "We can't let that woman touch our money." The words seared, their racism a heavier burden than the hospital's fluorescent lights, each syllable a reminder of the wall they built to shut her out. The overt cruelty peaked at a hospital fundraiser, a glittering affair meant to support cancer research. Aminata, in an emerald dress with braids swept into a regal crown, represented James with pride, her voice steady as she spoke to donors about her outreach program. A tech mogul, his fake tan gleaming, leaned in, his voice loud enough to draw eyes. "How'd a girl like you land James? Affirmative action?" Laughter rippled through the crowd. Claire's giggle the loudest, her champagne flute raised in a mock toast, her eyes glinting with malice. "Talent and love, not quotas," Aminata replied, her smile tight but unwavering, her heart pounding under the weight of their public scorn. The room's eyes pierced like daggers, their prejudice a wound she carried with grace, her resolve hardening with each step. Every visit, every slight, was a cut, but Aminata refused to break. She spent days at James's side, her voice a steady anchor as she read him reports, her hand warm in his. "You're the heart of this," he said, his voice weak but filled with pride, his eyes holding hers despite the pain. In the hospital cafeteria, Richard's voice hissed, "She's waiting for her payout." Claire nodded, her tone venomous. James deserves better than her kind. The words her kind stung like a lash, but Aminata channeled her pain into purpose. Her mind focused on protecting the empire they'd built together. She stood in the hospital's stark corridors, her reflection in a glass window showing a woman forged in love and resilience, her heart a furnace against their cold disdain. This chapter was Aminata's crucible. The hospital's fluorescent lights casting long shadows, she refused to let dim her spirit. The carver's racism and greed were a towering wall she vowed to climb. Their words a storm she'd weather with unwavering strength. For those who fought for love against a world that sought to diminish them, her pain echoes like a clarion call. Stay tuned, as Aminata's resolve was about to ignite a reckoning that would shake the carver's gilded empire to its very core. The study, a shadowed sanctuary of oak shelves heavy with leather-bound books, was steeped in the scent of old paper and fading hope. Its walls adorned with framed patents and a globe etched with Carver Tech's global reach. James sat, frail under a cashmere blanket, his eyes alight with a fire leukemia couldn't extinguish. This chapter unveils the pivotal moment when James entrusted Aminata with a secret to reshape an empire's destiny. For those given a burden both gift and battle, her story resonates. Smash that subscribe button and ring the bell for more tales of courage and defiance. Drop your city in the comments. Where are you watching from? Here, a storm brewed in the quiet of the night, and Aminata forged a resolve that would shake the carver's gilded world to its core. In late 2023, James, weakened by leukemia's relentless grip, insisted on meeting at home, away from the hospital's sterile hum. The Palo Alto mansion stood silent, its marble floors reflecting the cold light of chandeliers, their prisms casting jagged patterns across ornate ceilings, a stark contrast to the warmth James once brought. The study, his haven, held a photo of him and Aminata laughing in her Oakland apartment, a memory of simpler days. Aminata entered, her simple sweater hugging her frame, braids loose, her heart heavy with the weight of the carver's relentless slurs. That woman, diversity Heir, their venom echoing in her mind like a persistent drumbeat. Aminata, James said, his frail hand reaching for hers, his fingers thin but warm, his voice a lifeline cutting through her pain. I need to tell you something. His eyes, though shadowed by illness, burned with love and a fierce anger, a testament to his unwavering spirit. I've seen how they treat you, he continued, his gaze locking onto hers. Eleanor, Richard, Claire, they don't see your brilliance, your heart. Aminata's throat tightened, his words naming a truth she'd buried deep, her pain laid bare. For years, she'd endured their barbs, Claire's urban jabs, Richard's dismissive interruptions, Eleanor's veiled disdain, swallowing her hurt to keep peace for the man she loved, her silence a sacrifice now acknowledged. James leaned forward, wincing, and pulled a folder from his desk drawer, its edges crisp, sealed with a purpose that seemed to pulse in the dim firelight. Open it, he said softly, his voice steady despite the strain, as if he'd made peace with his choice. Aminata's fingers trembled as she lifted the cover, revealing legal documents, pages dense with text and signatures, their weight heavier than the paper itself. This is everything, James said, his voice resolute. Carver Tech, the properties, the investments, it's yours now. The room spun, the magnitude of the empire, a billion-dollar company, a global portfolio, landing in her hands like a thunderbolt. James, no, this is too much, she said, her voice shaking, her eyes wide with disbelief. Your family. They don't deserve it, James interrupted, his voice sharp with conviction, then softening with tenderness. Your vision, your outreach program, it's the future of this company, not their greed or prejudice. His words shattered Aminata's doubts, each syllable a validation of her worth. Her strategies had boosted Carver Tech's valuation by 35%, opened new markets with partnerships rooted in her Oakland roots. Yet the Carvers saw only her skin, their racism blinding them to her brilliance. You're the only one I trust, he said, his hand squeezing hers, his eyes holding a fierce pride. I promise, Aminata whispered, tears stinging her eyes, her voice a vow to honor his faith, her heart swelling with both love and dread. The folder rested in Aminata's lap, its pages a map to a future she hadn't dared imagine, a crown and a chain in one. The carvers' faces flashed in her mind. Eleanor's tight smile, Richard's scoff, Claire's venomous giggle at the fundraiser, their voices a chorus of disdain. "They'll fight this," Aminata said, her voice trembling with the weight of their inevitable wrath. "They'll say I manipulated you." James's smile was faint but fierce, a warrior's defiance in his fading frame. "Let them try." Patel, my lawyer, made it ironclad. He leaned back, exhausted but resolute, his trust a beacon in the shadowed study, its firelight casting dancing patterns across the walls. Aminata left the study, the folder clutched tightly, the crackling fire casting long shadows that mirrored the battles ahead. Her mother's jollof rice recipe, a thread to her Oakland roots, pulsed in her veins, a reminder of the strength that had carried her this far. The mansion's grand halls, once a cold labyrinth, now felt like a stage where she would take the lead, her steps echoing with purpose. The carver's prejudice was a towering wall, their slurs, urban, diversity higher, a storm she'd weather. She wasn't just James's partner. She was a force, ready to claim an empire they thought was theirs. For those entrusted with a dream larger than themselves, Aminata's moment echoes like a call to arms. Stay tuned as her reckoning loomed, a truth poised to unravel the carver's gilded world. The hospital room, a silent cocoon of white walls, echoed with the soft beep of machines, their rhythm a mournful dirge as dawn crept through the blinds on a quiet winter morning. James's hand lay still in Aminata's, his warmth fading, leaving a hollow grief that threatened to engulf her. This chapter traces the moment her world fractured, the carver's cruelty sharpening into a blade aimed at her soul. For those who've lost a guiding light yet found strength in its absence, her story resonates. Smash that subscribe button and ring the bell for more tales of heartbreak and defiance. Drop your city in the comments. Where are you watching from? Here, as James slipped away, the carver's greed roared louder, and Aminata steeled herself for a battle that would redefine an empire. That winter morning, the hospital's sterile walls stood in cruel contrast to the vibrant life Aminata and James had built together. Their Oakland evenings once filled with laughter and shared dreams. Months of bedside vigils, reading reports, and holding his hand through leukemia's relentless theft had not prepared her for this finality. As the monitors flatlined, Aminata clung to him, her tears soaking his hospital gown, her voice a trembling vow. "I'll keep our promise." The carvers, Eleanor, Richard, Claire, stood at the foot of the bed, their somber faces a mask for their calculations, their eyes fixed on Aminata as if she were a temporary shadow soon to be erased. Their gazes, cold and predatory, pierced her, but the folder James had entrusted her with burned in her mind like a hidden flame, its weight a silent promise. The funeral unfolded in a grand cathedral, its stained glass windows casting vibrant rainbows over mahogany pews, a kaleidoscope of light that mocked the darkness in Aminata's heart. She stood in a simple black dress, her braids pulled back tightly, her face a mask of grief and resolve, as Silicon Valley's elite offered practiced condolences. Eleanor, draped in a tailored black coat, dabbed her eyes with a silk handkerchief, her performance polished but hollow, her silver hair gleaming under the cathedral's soft glow. Richard shook hands, his suit impeccable, but his glances at Aminata were sharp, like a predator sizing up its prey. Claire's heels clicked on the marble floor, her whisper to a cousin cutting through the air. "She'll be gone soon." Aminata caught the words, each one a needle pricking her skin, but the folder's secret anchored her, a beacon of James's unwavering trust. Days later, Eleanor's call came, her voice dripping with false warmth through the phone's static. "Aminata, dear," she said, the word dear sharp as a shard of glass. "I need you at a family meeting to discuss James's affairs. Bring some of your ethnic recipes, will you? They're always so interesting." The condescension in her tone was a deliberate jab, marking Aminata as an outsider, a servant expected to cater to their whims rather than a wife with a rightful claim. "I'll be there," Aminata replied, her jaw tight, her voice steady despite the storm brewing within. The carvers thought they could divide James's empire like a prize they'd earned. their greed blinding them to the truth she carried. In her modest Oakland apartment, Aminata stood over the stove, the scent of jollof rice, her mother's recipe, filling the kitchen with memories of home. The pot simmered, its red-orange hues vibrant with paprika and ginger, each spice a thread to her roots, a reminder of the strength that had carried her through years of scorn. Her reflection in the window showed a woman transformed by grief, her eyes hardened with purpose, her hands steady as she stirred. James's words echoed, "You're the only one I trust." The folder's signatures her shield, its pages a testament to their shared vision. She wasn't merely cooking for their meeting, she was preparing for a war. Each stir of the pot, a declaration of her resolve to face their prejudice with unyielding power. As Aminata drove to the mansion, the winter sky hung heavy, bruised with clouds that mirrored the turmoil in her heart. The folder rested in her bag, its weight a grenade poised to detonate the carver's smug certainty. The mansion loomed ahead, its marble facade a fortress of privilege, its chandeliers casting cold light across grand halls. The carvers awaited, their table set for a feast of greed. But Aminata was no longer the woman who bowed to their slights. She was forged in love and loss, her steps echoing with purpose as she approached their domain, ready to confront their empire with a truth they could not deny. For those who've carried a secret that could change everything, her moment echoes like a call to battle. Stay tuned, as Aminata's storm was about to break, a reckoning poised to unravel their gilded world. The dining room of the Palo Alto mansion stood as a cathedral of arrogance, its glossy mahogany table gleaming under crystal chandeliers that cast opulent golden light, yet offered no warmth to the cold ambition of the carvers seated around it. Their tailored black suits, a mockery of mourning, framed eyes glinting with greed, poised to carve up James's billion-dollar empire like a prize they believed was theirs. This chapter unveils the moment their world shattered, as Aminata, a black entrepreneur from Oakland, silenced their scorn with a truth that reverberated like thunder through their gilded fortress. For those who've stood against those seeking to erase them, her story strikes a chord. Smash that subscribe button and ring the bell for more tales of defiance and triumph. Drop your city in the comments. Where are you watching from? Here, Aminata emerged not just as James's widow, but as his legacy, rewriting their rules in a clash that would echo through time. Aminata entered the mansion, her steps echoing across the cold marble foyer. A steaming dish of jollof rice clutched in her hands, its vibrant red-orange hues a stark contrast to the sterile grandeur surrounding her. Her black dress hugged her slender frame, its simple elegance a quiet armor, her braids swept into a tight bun, her heart pounding with the weight of James's trust. A secret folder in her bag, a grenade ready to detonate their smug certainty. Eleanor had summoned her for this family meeting to discuss James's affairs, her voice on the phone dripping with condescension. "Bring your ethnic recipes, dear." The words had stung like a lash, marking Aminata as an outsider, a servant in their eyes. But she walked forward, James's words, "You're the only one I trust," burning in her mind like a beacon through the storm. The dining room was a stage set for the carver's victory, its air thick with the scent of polished wood and entitlement. Eleanor sat at the head, her silver hair gleaming under the chandelier's glow, her pearl necklace a symbol of untouchable status, her tailored black coat a shield of authority. Richard slouched to her right, his Scotch glass sweating on the pristine white tablecloth, his eyes dismissing Aminata as if she were a fleeting inconvenience. Claire, to Eleanor's left, crossed her arms, her diamond earrings catching the light, her whispers to Margaret sharp as shards of glass, their giggles a prelude to cruelty. The table, adorned with fine porcelain and untouched gourmet dishes, had no place set for Aminata, only a sideboard where she was expected to leave her jollof rice and fade into the shadows. "Thank you, Aminata," Eleanor said, her smile a practiced mask of civility. "You can leave that and join us when you're ready." Aminata stood firm, her voice cutting through their chatter like a blade through silk. "I'm ready now," she declared, her tone steady despite the fire coursing through her veins. Eleanor's smile faltered, a crack in her polished facade. Richard's brow arched, his fingers tightening around his glass. We're discussing the future, Eleanor began, her voice patronizing as if addressing a child. The company needs experienced leadership, someone with a deep understanding of its legacy. Richard leaned forward, his tone slick with false sympathy. You've got your little startup, Aminata. Focus on that. Carver Tech stays with us. Claire nodded, her lips curling into a sneer. James wouldn't want his legacy, muddled by someone who doesn't understand it. The room hummed with agreement, their confidence a palpable force, until Margaret's mocking voice rang out, clear and venomous. She's just the help who got lucky. The words landed like a slap, stinging Aminata's skin, but Claire's next move cut deeper. Let's be honest, Claire said, her voice loud, venomous, stopping just short of a racial slur. You're not cut out for this. Their faces formed a gallery of smug certainty, their eyes gleaming with the assurance of victory. Aminata reached into her bag, her fingers brushing the folder, James's words echoing like a war drum. You're the only one I trust. Before you divide James's legacy, she said, her voice resonant, unwavering, you should see this. She laid the documents on the mahogany table, their crisp pages heavy with a truth that seemed to pulse in the chandelier's light. These are transfer papers, she announced, her heart steady now, her gaze sweeping over their stunned faces. Signed by James before he passed. Every asset, Carver Tech, the properties, the investments, is in my name. The room froze, the chandelier's golden glow casting shadows like cracks in their world. Eleanor's face drained of color, her hand clutching her pearls, her composure unraveling. Richard's glass clinked against the table, his mouth agape, his bravado shattered. Claire let out a sharp, disbelieving laugh. That's impossible. James would never. He would, Aminata interrupted, her voice a blade, cutting through their disbelief. And he did. While you dismissed me, I doubled your profits. My outreach program opened markets you never touched. James saw my work, my mind, when you saw only my skin. Their eyes widened, the truth sinking like a stone into their silence. Margaret stammered, her voice trembling. You tricked him. But her accusation faltered, her confidence crumbling under the weight of the documents. Aminata stood taller, the folder her shield, James's trust her sword. He knew your slurs, your whispers, she said, her voice rising with conviction. He chose me because I earned it, because I built what you took for granted. The heavy oak door creaked open, and Mr. Patel, James's lawyer, stepped into the room, his dark suit a stark contrast to the dining room's opulence, his briefcase a silent ally. I apologize for the delay, he said, his voice calm but unyielding, as he opened his case to reveal more documents. Everything Aminata says is accurate. James transferred all assets to her, effective immediately. She is the rightful leader of Carver Tech. He handed her the will, its pages a final testament to James's faith, a beacon in the storm of their shock. He also left letters, Patel added, his tone measured, for each of you, explaining his decision. Aminata placed 3 sealed envelopes on the table, their cream paper stark against the polished wood. James's handwriting a mirror to their cruelty. James wanted you to understand why, she said, her gaze sweeping over their frozen faces, her voice steady as granite. Eleanor's hands trembled as she reached for her envelope, her pearls glinting like a lifeline she could no longer grasp. Richard stared at his fingers motionless, his arrogance extinguished. Claire's face twisted, caught between rage and disbelief, her diamond earrings catching the harsh light. The chandelier's glow, once a symbol of their untouchable status, now exposed their shock, their faces a gallery of shattered certainty. Aminata stood at the table's edge, no longer the outsider they'd mocked, but the woman who held their empire in her hands. This was her moment, the clash James had prepared her for, a reckoning that would redefine their world. For those who faced rooms that sought to diminish them, Aminata's fire burns familiar. Stay tuned, as her reckoning was just the beginning, a spark that would ignite a legacy they couldn't deny. The dining room of the Palo Alto mansion stood frozen, its crystal chandeliers casting a golden glow that painted long, jagged shadows across the carvers' stunned faces. their empire slipping through their fingers like sand through an hourglass. Aminata's revealed documents lay open on the glossy mahogany table, her truth a thunderclap that silenced their scorn, shattering their smug certainty. This chapter traces the fracture of their world, as James's final words pierced their hearts, and Aminata rose as the leader they never anticipated. For those who've stood against erasure, her story resonates like a clarion call. Smash that subscribe button and ring the bell for more tales of courage and redemption. Drop your city in the comments. Where are you watching from? Here, in the quiet aftermath of a storm, the carvers faced their shame, and Aminata claimed her rightful place, a beacon of strength in a room once cold with disdain. The air in the dining room was thick, the silence heavy as the weight of Aminata's revelation settled like dust after an explosion. Eleanor's hand trembled, her pearl necklace glinting under the chandelier's harsh light, her face pale as the marble floor beneath her feet. Richard's Scotch glass sat untouched, beads of condensation pooling on the white silk tablecloth, his bravado extinguished like a snuffed candle. Claire clutched the arm of her chair, her earlier laughter replaced by a tight-lipped shock, her diamond earrings catching the light with every tense movement. Margaret, who had mocked Aminata as the help who got lucky, shrank back, her venom drained, her eyes darting to the floor. Aminata stood firm, her black dress a quiet armor, her braids swept into a regal bun. The folder, James's trust, her mandate, its pages a testament to a partnership the Carvers had never understood. Mr. Patel, James's lawyer, stood by the heavy oak door, his dark suit a stark contrast to the room's opulence, his briefcase a silent ally anchoring her truth. Aminata drew 3 sealed envelopes from her bag, their cream paper stark against the polished mahogany, each one bearing James's familiar handwriting, a mirror to the Carver's cruelty. "James left these for you," she said, her voice steady, cutting through the tension like a blade through silk. "He wanted you to understand why he chose me." She placed an envelope before Eleanor, another for Richard, and one for Claire, her movements deliberate, her eyes unwavering as she faced their stunned silence. Eleanor hesitated, her fingers hovering over the paper as if it might burn, her polished facade cracking under the weight of anticipation. "What is this?" she whispered, her voice trembling, a rare glimpse of vulnerability breaking through her socialite's armor, her silver hair catching the chandelier's glow like a fading crown. Eleanor opened her letter first, her hands shaking as she unfolded the page, her eyes scanning James's words with a growing intensity. Her face crumpled, the poised matriarch replaced by a mother confronted with her failures. "He writes of my coldness," she murmured, her voice barely audible. "How I dismissed you, Aminata, how my prejudice blinded me." Tears welled, smudging her mascara, a raw fracture in her carefully curated image, her pearl necklace glinting like a lifeline she could no longer grasp. Richard tore into his envelope, his jaw tight, his fingers rough against the paper, his eyes moving quickly, then slowing as the truth sank in. "He says I envied you," he muttered almost to himself, "that I let resentment cloud my judgment, that I never saw your worth." His shoulders slumped, his voice breaking, the arrogant brother humbled by his brother's piercing words. Claire was last, her hands trembling as she opened her letter, her lips pressed into a thin line, her face a storm of emotions. Anger, shame, disbelief. She read in silence, her diamond earrings catching the light with each subtle movement, her breath catching as the words hit home. "He saw us," she whispered, her voice so soft it barely reached across the table. "How we diminished you, Aminata." The confession hung in the air, echoing every slight, her urban jabs, her giggle at the fundraiser, her assumption Aminata was staff. Aminata nodded, her heart heavy with grief but resolute with purpose. "He did," she said, her voice firm yet tinged with sorrow. "And he was disappointed. But he hoped you'd learn to see me as he did, as a partner, a leader, a family." The word family landed like a stone, rippling through their silence, a challenge to the wall of prejudice they had built. Aminata stepped forward, her voice rising, clear and unshaken, resonating through the dining room's opulent expanse. I love James and I'll honor his vision for Carver Tech, she declared, her words a vow etched in steel. My outreach program doubled your profits, opened markets you never touched. I'm not here to take from you, I'm here to lead. The question is, will you be part of that future, or will you cling to your past? The room stilled, the chandelier's light harsh on their faces, exposing the cracks in their pride. Eleanor's tears, Richard's clenched hands, Claire's averted gaze. Margaret looked down, her earlier malice extinguished, her small frame diminished in the face of truth. They were no longer the untouchable Carvers, but a family forced to confront their own failings, their prejudice laid bare by James's final words. Mr. Patel cleared his throat, his voice breaking the heavy silence like a pebble in a still pond. James was explicit, he said, holding up the will, his tone calm but unyielding, his dark eyes scanning the room. Aminata is the rightful leader of Carver Tech. Her contributions, 35% valuation growth, new markets, proved her worth long before this moment. He handed her the will, its pages a final testament to James's faith, a beacon in the storm of their shock. He left trust funds for each of you, generous enough for a lifetime, Patel continued. But the company, the properties, the legacy, they're hers. His words landed like a gavel, sealing the truth, his briefcase snapping shut with a sound that echoed in the tense air. Aminata gathered the documents, her fingers steady, her heart a furnace of grief and unyielding strength. Read his letters, she said, her gaze sweeping over their stunned faces, her voice resonant with authority. Think about what he wanted, not just for me, but for you. The dining room, once their fortress of privilege, was now hers, claimed not by force but by right, by the love and work she and James had poured into it. Their faces, Eleanor's tears streaming down her cheeks, Richard's defeated stare, Claire's shock tinged with shame, formed a gallery of a family at a crossroads, their pride fractured by the truth. The chandelier's light, once a symbol of their untouchable status, now illuminated their reckoning, casting long shadows across the mahogany table. This was Aminata's moment, the clash James had prepared her for, a turning point where their prejudice met her power. She stood at the table's edge, no longer the outsider they had mocked with slurs like the help or diversity hire, but the woman who held their empire in her hands, her braids a crown of resilience, her black dress a banner of victory. For those who've stood tall against rooms that sought to diminish them, Aminata's fire burns as a beacon of hope. Stay tuned, as her reckoning was just the beginning, a spark that would ignite a legacy they could not deny, a future forged in courage and truth. Carver Tech's headquarters stood as a gleaming monument against the Silicon Valley skyline, its glass facade reflecting the dawn of a new era, a testament to Aminata's unyielding rise. James's trust rested on her shoulders, but her fire, forged in grief and defiance, illuminated a path through the shadows of prejudice. This chapter unveils her triumph, where a family scorned bowed to truth, and a legacy shone brighter than their gilded past. For those who've risen against doubt, her story resonates like a beacon. Smash that subscribe button and ring the bell for more tales of courage and redemption. Drop your city in the comments. Where are you watching from? Here, Aminata built a future from the ashes of their disdain, proving her strength as a force that could not be dimmed. In the months following the explosive dinner, Aminata took the helm of Carver Tech, the folder of James's documents her mandate, his faith her guiding star. Her outreach program, once dismissed as niche by the Carvers' sneering lips, became the company's cornerstone, forging partnerships with minority-led startups in Chicago, Atlanta, and Detroit. The numbers spoke louder than their past slurs, a 50% valuation growth in a single year, headlines across Silicon Valley hailing her strategies as revolutionary. Aminata stood in the boardroom, her braids swept high, her eyes steady, a black woman from Oakland commanding respect in a space that once sought to silence her. Her tailored blazer, a deep navy, hugged her frame, her presence a quiet rebellion against the Carvers' prejudice. Investors applauded her vision, the board listened to her every word, and her voice, once interrupted, now rang clear, echoing through the glass and steel fortress of innovation. The Carvers' transformation was a quiet revolution, their hearts stirred by James's letters, each word a mirror to their shame. Eleanor was the first to shift, her polished exterior cracking under the weight of her son's truth. One morning she appeared at Aminata's community center, a modest space filled with vibrant posters and folding chairs, her tailored coat out of place among the bustle of young entrepreneurs. "I read James's letter again," she said, her voice soft, her eyes red with unshed tears. "I was wrong, horribly wrong about you." Her apology, halting but sincere, addressed every vibrant jab, every cold glance that had sought to diminish Aminata. "Join us," Aminata said, gesturing to the volunteers mentoring kids from communities like her own in Oakland, their dreams as bold as hers had been. Eleanor nodded, her pearls tucked away, her sleeves rolled up as she helped a teenager refine a business pitch. Her actions a step toward healing, a bridge built from James's words to a shared future. Richard's change was slower, a man wrestling with his own pride. The brother who had sneered diversity hire threw himself into Carver Tech's operations, shedding his reliance on the family name. One evening, in the office's quiet hum, his tie loosened, his face earnest. He approached Aminata. "I didn't see you," he said, his voice heavy with James's letter's weight. "I was jealous, blind to your worth." His admission was a crack in his armor, his eyes reflecting a newfound respect. "Prove it," Aminata replied, her tone firm but open, offering a chance for redemption. Richard did, diving into partnership management, his work ethic a silent apology, his contributions building a new foundation for their fractured family, his efforts a testament to the power of truth. Claire, the sharpest of the carvers, took the longest to bend, her Stanford polish and cutting tongue slow to soften under the weight of her brother's words. Months passed before she reached out, her voice hesitant on the phone. "Can we talk?" They met in a quiet cafe, its wooden tables and soft lighting a stark contrast to the mansion's cold grandeur. Claire fidgeted with her napkin, her diamond earrings absent, her eyes avoiding Aminata's. "James's letter gutted me," she admitted, her voice breaking. "I laughed when they called you the help. I was wrong." Her confession was raw, a reckoning with her own prejudice, her face a canvas of shame and regret. Aminata leaned forward, her jollof rice cooling between them, her voice steady. "Then start by listening." Claire nodded, her resolve forming, and over time she attended meetings, asked questions, and began to see Aminata as James had, a leader, a partner, a force. Aminata stood in her office, the Silicon Valley skyline stretching beyond the floor-to-ceiling windows, a canvas of possibility painted in hues of dusk and ambition. James's photo rested on her desk, his smile a quiet presence, a reminder of the love that had fueled her rise. She had grown Carver Tech, not just in profits but in purpose, her outreach program a lifeline for communities like the one that raised her in Oakland's vibrant streets. Her mother's jollof rice, once mocked as ethnic, now graced company events, its rich red-orange hues a symbol of her roots and her triumph. The Carver's steps toward redemption, Eleanor's volunteering, Richard's dedication, Claire's humility, rebuilt a family fractured by their own prejudice, their actions a testament to the power of truth and time. Aminata's journey taught that legacy is not built on wealth but on courage, on standing tall when the world seeks to shrink you. She was no longer the woman who entered the mansion hoping for acceptance, her braids a quiet rebellion, her heart a furnace of resilience. She was a force, a leader who turned prejudice into progress, her vision reshaping an empire. If her story moved you, smash that like button and share it with someone who needs its fire. Have you ever risen above doubt to claim your place? Drop your story in the comments. Aminata reads everyone. Tell your city. Where are you watching from? This is a call to all who've been underestimated. Your worth is yours to define. Stay tuned for more tales of triumph, where strength and truth forge legacies that endure.